All right, disruptors, I want to welcome you to another episode of Close the Deal. I've got Eric Murr, a 30-year veteran in the marketing field. And Eric, you and I, you met at a Virginia Loggers Association during my time head of the Carolina Loggers Association. And you and I hit it off talking about marketing. And 3 years later, I guess just about, we're still in communications from that one conversation
Yep.
meeting each other. Welcome, and I'm glad to have you on. Welcome to the show.
It's absolutely great to be here. I absolutely loved our conversation, and we're people the same birds of feather for sure.
We've had multiple conversations since. Now, look, you're based in, I don't want to say the town you're in,
Chambersburg, Pennsylvania.
Chambersburg, Pennsylvania, not too far from Harrisburg, D.C., Baltimore. You're kind of in the heartland of all that space.
Yeah.
What is your favorite place that you got a client to take them to lunch or dinner to do business, to close the deal?
Allenbury Restaurant and Resort in outside of Boiling Springs, Pennsylvania. This place is an Orvis rated fly fishing resort, and it sits on the Yellow Breeches, which is actually where my home sits on. So it's just basically downstream about 6 miles. And it's a world-class fly fishing stream. It is just absolutely amazing. They poured millions of dollars in a renovation for this little playhouse, and it's just gorgeous. An old farmhouse, and Daniel Boone's nephew had a place right.
Oh my gosh!
Stayed in that little cottage. Me and my fiance stayed. We're the first two to stay in that little cottage. So
Wow.
I love Allenbury as my go-to. It's just super classy, and it's also got an incredible, beautiful scenery around it.
That sounds more than just a place to take somebody. It sounds like a destination too.
100%.
Yeah, that's
Check
awesome.
It out. Check it out for sure.
All right. So you are the vice president of outdoor advertising, outdoor billboard advertising for Kegerreis, and you've been in this role for quite some time. And you and I were just talking about billboards the other day. We started talking about all the mistakes that people make with billboard advertising. I always go by, I see a billboard, I go by and there's nothing that either does it or draw my attention to it, or they got way too many words that I have no idea or the message is just confusing. So I think we can, normally I'm asking the problem a company solves or small business solves and the solution. In this case, we're going to help the business owners to make sure when they spend money on a billboard, they're going to get hopefully they'll get a result from having a billboard, letting that tool work for them. So let's address the biggest mistakes you see happen in the landscape of billboards, because you see them from all different angles, and you've got a very unique approach to this because of your background and philosophy with your degree in philosophy. Let's talk about that, and then we'll start unpacking the mistakes that business owners can avoid.
Yeah, sure. So I was a artsy-fartsy guy, and sales and marketing seemed like the farthest thing from my mind as an English major and philosophy major. And so, but I discovered that these two backgrounds were actually perfect for my work. English gave me the ability to articulate the billboard value proposition.
Mm-hmm.
It was philosophy, the study of philosophy, that really, I think, challenged me to develop a mindset of exploring truth to the deepest level. And so you're peeling back layers of the curtain all the time, and you're pulling back fraud, and you're saying, that's irrelevant, or that's not quite accurate, or what about this situation? So as you start doing that process, you discover that there's a ton of layers of bullshit, and you really get to the kernel of truth. And I think when it comes to trying to utilize billboards for businesses, they have so much they want to say, right? They're just excited. They're passionate about all that they do. They could talk for hours about their business. But the reality is the context of the billboard landscape is such that you have 5 seconds, man. So, or gals. So you have 5 seconds to tell that story. And if you got 5 seconds, then you really have to distill your core value propositions, not only from the variety of ones that you have, but to the singular one, and then how you actually express it such that it connects with your audience in a super brief period of time. And I think that that major has been absolutely critical to my work in helping advise clients.
That's an art form, what you just described. And you know, if somebody has to go, a small business owner, the first time they walk into a networking meeting and they give them 1 minute to speak, their head explodes. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
They want to jam everything in their head onto that billboard, and it does not work. You got to learn how to decipher that message. In your case, to 5 seconds or less, because the faster the cars go, and the shorter that it's maybe 3 seconds or 2 seconds.
Yeah.
So
For sure.
let's unpack the mistakes the most common mistakes you see, and then how can they address each mistake as well. And we'll just go down the list of things, because these are vital for anybody considering billboard advertising. This is the show you need to be listening to for sure. All right, let's go through them.
All right. Well, the first one's expect the unreasonable. And remember, we're framing the statements as these are mistakes. All right. So when you expect the unreasonable, you're forgetting how human beings actually operate. With 5 seconds, how much can you actually digest? Practice reading it. So if you're thinking about doing a billboard, you should read it out loud. You should time yourself, and then you should certainly think about whether it's possible to do that. And I think the trade-off with billboards is massive visibility, super impact, high reach and frequency, low cost. So it's got so many wonderful components to it, but it can only do so much. It is a very blunt tool instrument. Despite its grandeur, it is actually extremely blunt tool. And I would argue it's like your automatic nail gun in your tool bag and your media tool bag. Like that's the metaphor I use. Not a router. It's not a saw. It's not going to perform sophisticated tasks. It's going to perform a very blunt instrument type of task. But like the automatic nail gun, boy, if you're framing a house, man, and a foundational effort to inform people about a single value proposition, you can't pick a more valuable, efficient tool than the billboard. So don't expect the unreasonable, and see it for its limitations, and then use it appropriately so you can choose the right message that has the broadest relevance to the broadest number of people, instead of trying to do all things to all people, because it won't happen.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, I know there are multiple use cases for billboards. One I can think of was definitely a blunt instrument is exit now.
Yes, for sure. That's a
And
great
that
one.
work. That's work. The name of the business, and exit now, 1 mile down the road, 500 yards down the road, whatever it is. That's a powerful message. All right. What's the next one?
Ignore your online reality. Okay. So billboards, being a blunt tool instrument, typically inspire search. They get you noticed. And then what's the natural, like who pulls over to the side of the road? When's the last time you've pulled over to the side of the road, written down a phone number or written down a URL? You don't do it. What do you do later though? You're inspired. You're like, that's interesting. Or you're curious. You wait for the timing such that you're actually going to do the research. And like everybody does, we go online to search. So when you're going online to search, what happens when you don't rank? So if you're promoting search, and I use the example of the mom and pop lawn care places that have like the new Z-turn mower. If they're promoting the lion's share of that billboard for the Z-turn mower, and then you go online, when you search for the Toro Z-turn mower near me, who's showing up? Lowe's, Home Depot. Like, have you prepared yourself for what the natural consequence is of an inspired search? And if you haven't addressed that and have an intelligent strategy paired with your out of home, then you're going to miss massive opportunities.
Yeah, I agree with that. We need to come back to it, because I know that's a specialty of y'all's that you all do with the digital.
Indeed.
Pairing the two. So I want to make sure we come back to that.
Okay.
All right. The next one. Assume people care. Is that the next one?
That's
I got
correct.
and you emailed me this list, so I'm kind of going along with you.
Yeah.
Okay.
100%. Yeah. Take the thunder as you wish. Assuming people care means that we're not buoyed up by editorial content. Billboards exist as pure advertising. They are on the side of the road, a static message typically, and whether you read it or not has everything to do with whether the billboard has done its job in getting noticed. And so as you clutter it up, put in more information, it's not just that the message itself has to be understandable in 5 seconds. It has to draw your eye. So remember that you are not in your customers did not get in the road to go tour billboards. They got in the road to go pick up their dry cleaning, take Joey to soccer practice, to go to school. They're not out there touring billboards. So if you really want to be smart, start with the assumption that nobody even cares. So so definitely get right with strong impacts and messaging that will invoke curiosity or be impossible to miss.
Yeah, and I think these other elements we're going to bring in will address that issue for sure. What's the next one?
Next one's forget that advertising is amplification. And what I mean by that is that advertising is what you do after you've identified an actual strong core value proposition that's been valued by the marketplace. Advertising is not a Hail Mary. It cannot fix broken brands. It cannot fix one-star review restaurants. So you've got to get the service model correct first. You really have to get the business experience, the consumer user experience down so that they feel good about it. Because as you advertise and you're not ready to serve that customer base, it's putting the cart before the horse. I mean, the first and foremost, get rid of the cockroaches or sweep up or take out the 3-foot weeds on the front of it. I've talked as many people out of advertising, billboard advertising, as I have about sold them, because there's so many businesses that have stopped doing what they need to do first and foremost to ensure that their user experiences are fantastic. But then when you get that right, turn to billboards, because if you want to amplify great stories, we take great brands and really amplify the
Yeah, otherwise you're driving people to a business. They get drive up and say this is ratty, and then just drive right off, and you've wasted a bunch of money.
100%.
Yeah, that makes sense. What's the next one?
People thinking features and not benefits. I mean, the air conditioner comes to mind that you put in your window, and we're not buying the XJ2000 because it has those alloy back ends, or it's got it's separated by coils of 2 inches versus what. It makes me cool. All right. So you buy air conditioners to make you cool. You buy products because they make your life better. So when you frame and make strong messaging, it ain't about what you care about. It's what your customers care about and how their lives are improved by that message. That doesn't always work when you have one choice in 5 seconds. Sometimes promoting your logo really makes a lot of sense. Because it builds trust and it improves your conversions. Sometimes it makes a lot of sense, like you said, to say, turn right at light. You don't need to overthink it. But if you're actually building a brand and you're trying to tell a story in the part of the marketing funnel where billboards serve the goal of persuading you, then think about how it makes your life better.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And that goes back to the core of what an entrepreneur does. They solve a problem.
Yes.
So if somebody's hot, they want to be cool.
Yeah, exactly right.
Or somebody's cold, they want to be warm. Though it's tough. You might need to change the billboard out in the middle of this, between seasons.
Yeah, and it's not so much even in the messaging, because typically you can really overthink this and worry about trying to describe something that's too hard to describe on a billboard. You may want to use other media tools for that, but your billboard is really about, more than anything, thinking about messaging that's relevant to the consumer. So the fact that you've been open since 1995, or that you're open 9 to 5, the whole 9 yards, like that's not the place for out of home. Obviously, it's there to say, what matters most to me. Are you half price than the other competitor? Are you closer? Are you better? Do you have the new Tickle Me Elmo? What do you have that I really want? That I care about, because in a short period of time, we got to be focused on the things that really matter.
That makes sense. All right. The next one this is a good one, I think. This is a really powerful one. You want me to read it? I'll take
Yeah,
this.
go ahead.
Being driven by personal aesthetics and ego, not the science of color and contrast or audience-focused content.
Yeah. I mean, ego sells a lot of billboards. I got to be honest with you. There's nothing like, you feel like you've arrived when you put up a billboard. You're there with Apple and Amazon and Google and Bob Smith insurance agent, I mean, it's really, it's hard to resist, and I don't blame you, you know, but at the end of the day, I think that so many times people they're too focused on their own needs, their own wants, as opposed to, again, the customer. And the reality is there's color combinations that don't work. Well, our color logos, blue and red, let's put together. Blue and red vibrate. You know, that's a reality. So you can't have a vibrating billboard because it has a negative impact on you. Red, I mean, if you look at the science of color, stark red is danger, right? So is yellow. Yellow and black is danger. Like there's an associative kind of gross takeaway from yellow and black, for example. Like those two combinations say, what is it, a construction zone? Am I in danger? You know, whatnot. Or red says stop. So recognize that these tones have corresponding emotional reactions to them, and it's not about your ego. It's not about things that you think just should be. It's about what the science says. There are associative colors with blue and with green, and so as you think about your logo, if you think about actually how you're going to combine particular phrasing and how that's laid out, even with American Disabilities Act, there are color combinations there that relate to that are appropriate and not appropriate, or readable and not readable for those that are colorblind. So, I mean, at the end of the day, if you're going to put this all out there and spend this investment, you know this stuff, like really understand what those associative colors and combinations mean.
You know, I'll share a real quick story. When I was head of the Louisiana Seafood Promotion and Marketing Board, we had a red square logo that said Louisiana Seafood Board. And that we spent 3 years building that brand, about 4 years building that brand. And the logo popped. It showed up no matter where we put it. But when the BP oil spill happened, I'll never forget, we hired an agency to help us rebrand everything, reposition ourselves, because we were trying to reinstill trust into the customer. Yeah. And when you said stop sign, I'll tell you what the guy, when he made the pitch and said, we're going to change your logo, we all just the board went, whoa. So everybody knew our logo.
Yeah.
Well, when he said your square red logo looks like a stop sign, danger warning, seafood contaminated with oil, and everybody's like, in an instant, we all switched gears and said we like the new logo, which was blue, of course, for trust and so forth.
Well, and you highlight the critical point here, which is what matters most. Again, if you think about the reaction in that room, it was an immediate reaction of ego. Like, oh no, this is our baby. You cannot tell us our baby's ugly, right? So that's impossible for you to tell me. And then when you say your baby's in danger, completely different reaction, right? So at the end of the day, it's about what outcome matters. Is it your big head on the billboard, or is it what matters to the consumer? Because do you care about sales most? Then think about what's the actual best use of the product, not what either checks the box for your ego or in fact makes it easier because it's always been done that way, or whatever the case may be. But that you highlight a perfect example, that person called attention to the outcomes that matter, brought together a logical argument as to what was taking place with those associations, and a corrective action was taken.
It was remarkable to see a 180-degree turn like that, including in my own mind. When he said it, I'm like, oh, he's right. All right, the next one. Go ahead, take the next one.
Yeah, it's not considered the ads role in the marketing funnel. I believe the obstacle is the way. And what I mean by that is that you really have to study. And if people don't know what the marketing funnel is, they absolutely have to if they want to do best practice marketing. And I'll just quickly recap that for those that don't know. But your top of the funnel is awareness. Then you move to consideration, and then you move to conversion, down to loyalty, and then advocacy. It's kind of like an hourglass. And when you see things go viral, that's your advocacy at the bottom of the funnel. Why? Because, Susie, you got to go to this great restaurant. It's amazing, right? So that's because the user experience has been fantastic, and that's your ultimate goal, because that's a perpetual, win where you get booked out 10 months in advance because you're the best restaurant in town because everybody's talking about it. So, but at the top of it is is often an immaturity in where someone's at. Like, you can't vote for somebody if you don't know they exist, right? So I look at awareness like it's the flower and the cake.
Mhm.
And awareness is a critical, necessary, but yet not sufficient piece of the puzzle. So as you introduce billboards and you say Bob Jones for Congress, well, then that's a huge check mark. If you're blue or red, you're going to be like, or not. But the
Mm.
first step is at least knowing that this guy is someone you could vote for.
Yeah.
And when I speak to billboards as understanding your role in the marketing funnel, recognize what's the most critical ingredient. The obstacle is the way. People don't know about me. That's an awareness choice. You know what? People don't realize how much better I am than my customers. That's a persuasion choice. Or they're saying like nobody's ever clicking on my ads. That's a trust choice. So use the billboards to really speak to each and every whichever element of that. Where's it getting gunked up? Where's their blockage? Where's the obstacle in that marketing funnel such that you can use that automatic nail gun to hammer it into place and fix that particular missing piece? And the billboards can actually operate in any one of those arenas. Typically, post us on Facebook is the bottom of the funnel, or you can say, "Hey, we exist." But I think, or if you like turn right at the biggest ball of yarn down the road, like that's
Mhm.
your conversion. Or we have now the 199 lease deal that's out there for you, and that's
Mhm.
your persuasion. Like put a
Mhm.
specific call to action that's meaningful.
Mhm.
And really just understand what particular play has the greatest benefit, and recognize that that funnel takes place in all the time. You can't ask someone to marry you on the first date. So the customer goes through a journey. That's the
Mhm.
customer journey, of course. And so you want to see where they stopped and they're sitting on the side of the road, and you want to keep moving them forward.
And that's a great analogy. Everybody wants to get, I mean, you think about people hitting me up on LinkedIn. They want to get they want to go straight to the dating piece. They want to fast everything up. That's what you just basically, let's fix the thing that's broken and get
Fix the thing that's broken.
and get that
100%.
and get that attention. All right. The next one says make calls to action that or this is a mistake, making calls as action that are not believable.
Right. What's the phrase? Specificity is spectacular. I forget, but basically, if you see an ad for a $199 new Q45, what's the
Mhm.
first thing that comes to mind?
Yes.
Why? What's in the
Because
back of your mind?
so I know the real value of the car.
Right, but what's baked into that offer? If it's a 199 lease, what do you have to do to get into that car?
Oh, I gotta put down a big fat down
Amen.
payment. Yep.
That's right. So in advertising, we're naturally skeptical, right? We've already had these experiences, and when we see those ads, we call bullshit, right?
Mhm.
Because we know that there's something to it. Or you only get 12 miles a year, right?
Mhm, mhm.
12,000? No, you get 12 miles a year, right?
Mhm.
Except for a 199 lease that for a car that costs $1,200 a month or $1,500 a month for a lease. So, I mean, at the end of the day, you can't keep putting messages out there that are not believable. And that comes down to also the first thing I think we talked about, which is we can't fix broken brands and one-star review restaurants. So
Mhm.
if you say, we're the greatest restaurant, someone goes online, sees your one-star reviews, and they say, no, you're not, right?
Mhm.
So advertising is amplification. It can't fix stuff. So really pay attention to, in my opinion, unbelievable ads because they get ignored, or they make you angry at some level, distrustful. You actually get a little, annoyed at that brand as opposed to a positive one. So find messages that are legit. Find messages that really amplify your strengths, and then
Mhm.
go that route as opposed to try to dupe the customer because they're really tired of that.
Yeah, as a customer, I'm thinking to myself, that does get old. It gets very, very old. All right, what's the next one?
Fear to be great on stage, and I have to give some credit to my colleague Wes Frick, who owns BillboardDesignGuy.com. He's a passionate billboard designer, and we've had a couple conversations. I really like this guy. He's an up and coming person in the industry and really making some waves. But he fear to be great on stage is actually his statement, and I think that's not going for it. Like,
Well,
and in your world,
mm,
you're working with entrepreneurs, man. I have the greatest esteem and the
mhm,
highest regard for entrepreneurs that put their lives on the line, who are fixing broken boilers at 3 a.m. and
mhm,
they're stepping in at the counter for Susie who called off sick. They're leveraging, they're taking out a second mortgage on their properties. like these are the best people that are moving and shaking and taking risks. And so when you get to your advertising, the last thing you want to do is in that amplification mode that billboards are is to go, yeah, we're kind of okay. You know, you can come in and stop it if you want. No, be great. You know, take those bold risks. I mean, go for it. If you do a 4-letter swear word, not that I'm suggesting that's the answer, but billboards have the ability to shock the world. Like it looks like a UFO landing on the side of the road if you do it right. So if you do 4 letter swear word with a phone number, you can get all sorts of calls. Like it has incredible potential, and 1% of billboard advertisers really take advantage of that capacity. The average billboard gets probably 250,000 impressions every month. And that's for an average of probably, I would say $600 to $1,500 a month. And to then waste it with a business card boring ad is a total waste of money and time and resources.
I remember one of the billboards, that was a teaser billboard. You might remember this. It was a Red Dog beer. Remember when that came out? They put, next to the Superdome in New Orleans, they put a black billboard up just with the Red Dog's face with no words, just to get everybody talking. Like, what is this? And then like a week or two later, they came back and finished out the rest of the billboard.
100%. It's like that's a sophisticated scavenger hunt, right?
Yes.
So you put in the brain. You've branded on the brain that dog, and next thing you're like, what is it? I'm unresolved. This lives in your psyche. It's painful to not know what it is. It's a human condition to be curious and to seek out answers. And you're seeing this, and there's no answer. That drives you nuts. That emotional connection with your billboard is exactly what you want. And guess what? When that logo comes up somewhere, and now after that imprinting, when it shows up somewhere in your day, you're like, oh my gosh, that's the scavenger hunt I've been looking for. I've got to go find it. It's powerful stuff. Yeah, for sure.
I'll give you this before I ever got into marketing. I started working, my first job out of college was working for a franchise. They put up a teaser billboard. I never saw a teaser billboard before, and it caught my attention. Everything you just described is exactly what that billboard did. It was bees and an apple, and that was it. And there was no logo. Do you know what brand I'm talking about?
I'm trying to remember. Hold on.
Flip it around, the two words.
Applebee's. Applebee's. Wow.
I know. See, it was unresolved. They kept that billboard up for a month. Everybody's like, what is this? Because nobody knew the brand in New Orleans of Applebee's.
Wow.
So
nice.
That really bugged everybody. That billboard stayed up for an entire month. And I remember that as a young kid coming right out of college. It made that much of an impression that I forgot about that until we started talking. Literally, I forgot about that until we started talking about this. And I mentioned that I remember the Red Dog always. I forgot about I had to bring that up after you described that so well. All right. Like adjust design by location. I'll let you take the last one after that. Adjust design by location.
Yeah. I have to give some credit to Wes on this one, because when we talked and compared notes and I was looking for his take on my mistakes of billboards, he offered these two, or at least reminded me of these two, I should say. What if your competitor is right below your billboard, for example? Or what if your billboard is in front of a big green forest, ivy wall, or it's all brick? If you don't think about the context of your billboards and their locations, then you're missing a huge opportunity to design it in a way that ensures that it can dramatically work against it. That's a lot of extra work. And it's one of the more subtle things that I think is an ask that's a lot for busy business owners to figure out. But if you can, especially if you're buying a permanent directional, go drive it and go check it out and think, is this all green? Is this all blue? What's my strongest contrast color against that backdrop? Every billboard's at a different location. It's not in the same publication. It's not on the same radio spot. It's coming in at a different geographical location. Height, width, location, grass, greenery, sky, brick. It could be all sorts of different things. And if you're there, it could inspire a unique message that could be very, very relevant.
Yeah. And I wish I could think of a specific example, but almost the opposite is true too. What can be used from the environment that the billboard could blend in and share the message where it becomes a larger message. The background becomes part of the message. And I've seen those. I can't think of one specifically off the top of my head, but they're out there, and that's really smart too.
100%. Yeah, there's a couple of great examples floating around the world, and I'm drawing a blank
I
myself.
know.
But there are definitely some ones where they've taken the context and designed the billboard entirely around that
And it worked.
exclusively, and chosen locations around it, like especially competitors. I've seen
Yeah.
some really dramatic competitors. There's also some cool stuff where, like right in front of a stadium, I've seen some billboards, especially like back in the Olympics. Nike took over around I guess it's the Coliseum, but there was someone throwing well, I guess for the Raiders football, like there was a person throwing, a quarterback throwing, and then on the other side of the road, there was the receiver catching.
Oh, that's cool. That's
So
really cool.
like, and I remember one up in the Poconos for Dunkelbergers, there one come to mind where a fisherman was casting a fish. On the other side of the road was the fish being caught. So like
That's
you're driving up, and I mean, what an amazing way to combine geography with the power of out of home and take and leverage a passion of people and say, well, you caught the biggest fish across the road. And how awesome is that? Like it's so memorable. And in that sense, you think about that versus the next billboard that's a business card. How dramatically different is that? I've heard that creative can make the difference. And I'm hundreds of percentages of difference in output in terms of the quality of the creative and the execution versus, say, just the actual value proposition that's embedded in the decision.
and it can have legacy too when it's really that good. Think about the cows, with Chick-fil-A. I mean, when they first put the cow on the billboard, people were probably like, "What in the world?" That probably, I mean, it gets attention to this day.
100%. In fact, sequences are also another thing. Just I talked about the border across the road, but I think we all know south of the border. I think
Yeah.
most of us older folks know Burma Shave.
Well,
Like when you actually do sequential ads, they become incredibly memorable. Not everybody owns as much land as Pedro does, but to pull that off, because that would cost a small fortune today. But you get the point, which is that if you really are a little bit more thoughtful about how to be creative, you really leverage the opportunity in dramatic ways. And like you said, we did programs with clients, and I've heard clients tell me over and over again who ran programs for a while. Yeah, you guys have that billboard up. I just saw it. Like I ended that billboard program 4 years ago.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? And quick aside, in a rotation, I have a client of mine who's a realtor. He's one of the more successful commercial realtors who does a billboard. He has one sign. He rotates and he moves every 2 months to different locations in Chambersburg, PA.
Mhm.
And he has people tell me, how many billboards do you have? Like, it's like the activity and the movement makes people think that he has like a dozen billboards. He says, I have one. He's like, no way, you don't have one. Like,
He knows it.
well,
Smart.
it's one over a longer period of time that he's might have been on 30 different locations. So
Yeah, and you mentioned south of the border. People along the Gulf Coast may not be familiar with that. People on the West Coast may not be familiar with that. South of the border is probably one of the top listed as one of the top 10 tackiest places I think in the United States. And it's so big. It's got 2 interstate exits for it they were put in by legislation to create these exits because it became such a big deal way back in the heyday of
wow, I
driving.
didn't know that.
Yeah, and the first time I drove from New Orleans all the way to Pennsylvania, I started seeing the billboards. I literally started counting them because I knew about my wife's from the Carolinas, so she is from that town. So I knew all about the history and everything. So I started counting the billboards. It was hundreds. I mean, when you go south to north to all the way to Pennsylvania, there were billboards for that thing way back.
Yeah,
It was
cool.
crazy. They absolutely dominated that stretch of I-95, which is staggering. Most businesses can't do that. Most small businesses. But it drives home the point, though, to everything you say. What's the last thing?
Trust without verifying, but I do want to make at least one more point after we're done here. The trust without verifying means with the greatest and sincerity, I have made recommendations to clients that I thought billboards were the greatest. And a recent one actually came to mind where I'm partial to roadside reads, and I've always thought that clients would assume a roadside read would be better.
Mhm.
And there is this unit down in New Jersey, and it was a roadside read versus an opposite. We have a board that has both sides,
Mhm.
and the client mistakenly thought I was talking about the cross read,
Mhm.
and that but it was the other way around. So he was disappointed to learn that the open unit was the right hand read. I'm like, why? That thing's closer to the road. It's got relatively greater impact. It's got the exact same traffic. Help me. You don't have a directional need. What's going on? Well, there's a traffic light out there, and it backs up the whole way back. So in that situation, the dwell time on the one side was far greater than the dwell time on the other. And he's like, I'm just not that interested in it. So mistakes happen with assumptions, certainly is one possible outcome. And the other thing is that, that I don't like that location because it's right next to where I used to grow up, and I don't like to remember that. Or gee, that's got that, the photo sheets in a lot of billboards, just to get straight up, is they're marketers, right? We're marketers. So we're gonna market those billboard pictures nicely, right? We're going to get the quiet angle. We're going to take out the sign that's kind of disrupting it a little bit. Or what about that telephone pole? Or gosh, it's a short read, so I better get on this side of the road to take that shot. Go drive your inventory. If you have the time, once you get that final recommendation, at the end of the day, you should definitely trust but verify, because you want to build partnerships with your reps, because they will absolutely care. If you build the relationship, they'll care about you. They'll be thoughtful, and they'll be looking for opportunities to serve you. And don't make it just a vendor relationship. Make it a partnership. But at the end of the day, they make mistakes. They make assumptions, and there could be disconnects with understanding. So it's always check the inventory, because salespeople don't necessarily ride every single location in the markets. There could be thousands, and they're trusting their internal people. And the numbers may look good, but the numbers can lie in terms of, gee, that wasn't quite right, or just, you get it. So that's the advice there. Take a look at every single site you ever buy.
That makes sense. All right. I want to touch on what you all do that's kind of unique. You all mix digital. You have a way of tracking with billboards that, so a lot of billboard agencies don't do. Let's talk about that real quick.
Yeah, thanks. We're actually late adopters with this, but the difference is a lot of traditional media companies added digital marketing services. And what they did was they hired a third party who then gave their salespeople a way to tap into digital marketing, which was exploding with growth since 2005. But what they did was they basically had no clue about what they were doing, and they just wanted to leverage the relationship and get some extra dollars. And clients wanted to do digital marketing, but they didn't know how to even evaluate it. It's all, so it's all kind of evolved. But we had been wanting to do this because it's still a need for so many small, mid-sized businesses for quality digital marketing services. So 4.5 years ago, I co-founded the division. It's now in Danville, Virginia. It's a 7,100 square foot facility. We've won a couple of national awards, and it's founded by my co-founder is a data scientist who's brilliant guy who oversaw 160 sales channels, $35 million in ad revenue. And being a data scientist, we calculate client acquisition costs, return on ad spend, and really put together the puzzle pieces to ensure that programs make sense. How does that relate to billboards? Well, again, speaking of that first part about how billboards drive search, and then you see the outcomes. I think one of the biggest surprising stats that I can share is that Apple, Amazon, and Google are all top 10 outdoor advertisers. I think maybe one slipped outside the top 10 now, but either way, it's a fundamental piece of their puzzle. The big question is why? A lot of people out not knowing this stuff think, aren't billboards dead? Didn't they die with yellow pages? Didn't they die with print and, terrestrial radio? But they're like, no, actually billboards, depending upon how you use it in the marketing funnel, it can dramatically change outcomes. In fact, my co-founder ran a test in Wyoming where he had a very high client acquisition cost for one of his products. And it was like $160 to acquire a new customer. He introduced billboards into that marketplace. It drove down the cost of acquisition down to $7 as opposed to $150 or whatever it was. Why? That's the big question. Why is that? Well, Google's algorithms are designed around local search, and and billboards inspire search. So as a billboard starts changing local search patterns, it's like a pop-up store arriving there. And since Google's macro algorithms are designed to reward relevancy, when this new brand started to get specific brand search and improved performance in category search conversions, well, it was a perfect combination where whereas he was acquiring customers so much more expensively, everything lowered. Your cost per click, your click-through rates increased, your conversions increased. And remember, if you can introduce a billboard where you were previously paying $10 a click and now you're paying $2 a click, that's a tremendous savings. Like that's a 500% increase in efficiency. In fact, the program was so successful, it paid for the billboard program entirely. Like by
Holy cow.
introducing a brand new medium that amplified your program so much better, it actually reduced your cost entirely because Google's rewards relevancy with its price per click model. It's amazing.
And you all know how to tie all the data science together with all that. That's free.
Man, I wish we could. There's so many people we could help. Yeah. And there's also the brands that we can't help because we discover a lot of brand weakness, and you can't fix weak brands. Like this is probably my biggest takeaway recommendation to people is don't think you can shortcut this. Don't think that billboards or any advertiser is going to fix a brand problem. Like you have got to make a user experience fantastic, because if you're at odds with what Google's macro algorithm is, which is to provide customers with relevant and satisfying outcomes, if you're at odds with that model, you're screwed, because they're going to start charging you more and more. And they because they set prices based upon what their probabilistic outcomes are.
Wow. Well, that's, normally I ask people at the very end, what's your number one piece of guides? I think you just summed it up, right?
Yeah, I would.
Yeah.
I'd say take care of business. Take care of business, and then really understand, and then use your tools in your tool bin appropriately. Don't take the router. Don't take the automatic nail gun to route your edge. It's not a sophisticated tool. Video might do that. Radio might do that. Print might do that. But billboards are the place for, amplifying a singular core value to the broadest number of people and letting it then do some magic in your digital funnel that is powerful, quite honestly, very powerful.
I've never heard somebody describe it like you just did at the very end right there. I love that. All right. How do people get in touch with you? Because you cover a pretty broad geographic area in your services, you have a very vast area you work with. How do people get in touch with you? What's the best website address? Email?
Thank you so much for that opportunity. First and foremost, you can find me on LinkedIn. You can also, and I'm an open networker. Send me a connection. I'll be glad to do it. My email is emurr@kegerreis.com, KEGRREIS.com. I'll be responsive to any outreach to anybody. And I do not, it's always permission-based selling with me. So I treat people the way I want to be treated. Everyone likes to buy, no one likes to be sold to, right?
Yep.
So I'm not going to be selling you. I'm going to be looking to help you. And if I'm the right solution, great. If I'm not, then I will try to find somebody in my network that can help you out.
All right, folks, visit closethedeal.com. I'm going to have Eric's page on our site. I'll have those links as well there for you, Eric, and for the people to find it.
Thank you so much.
I thank you for your time. I love your passion for what you do. It ties all the way back to that philosophy.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Yul.
All right, take care. Thank you. And that is a wrap with Eric. And what he just laid out with you, if you're considering a billboard, go back through that list. Go back and listen to it again. It could save you a lot of money, and it could also make a dramatic difference in the outcome of what you do and the results that you get. Folks, I want to thank you for being part of our community. This is all about to help people, educate people on business, especially small business, help them grow their businesses. If that's you, I'm glad you're here, and I want to thank you for being here. Please like, subscribe, ring the bell, all those things. And for those of you considering going into a business is not easy. I wrote a book called Your First Franchise Roadmap to help ease that path, because when you look at a franchise, the playbook, the handbook for the business is given to you to start the business and takes out all the risk and speeds up the speed to business getting going. So I want to thank you again for being here. Check out Your First Franchise Roadmap. Hey, I'm going to gift you a copy. Just visit yourfirstfranchise.com. Yourfirstfranchise.com. I'm going to gift you a copy. And if you decide to want a paperback copy of it, go to Amazon and just know this, 100% of the profits are going to go to make a wish. So I thank you for that. And all of those of you who have been with me for a little while, you know the drill. And for you, those of you who are new, make today a great day. Bye-bye.